Nick, this is the last one of the year, and after this one, we have to pick the new. Well, I mean, this podcast is over. We had to pick the new one.
I'll have to start a whole new podcast, Jeff.
Okay, and
so much work.
I've done so much research on third installments of a series.
Can this next podcast be our cooking podcast? Can we just cook?
A cooking
I don't think that's a thing, but I think it should be.
I'm you know what? I want to yes and you here. Okay, so Nick, in what things is it like? Okay, first one they had this one where they talked about random
first
stuff.
one.
The second one they talked about random other things, and then the third one they talked about cooking.
Third one we talked about cooking. Now I only know how to cook French toast, like I told you.
Yeah,
right?
with the vanilla extra.
Yes.
See, okay. I do pay attention.
I do appreciate that. Okay, so I am gonna need you to do a lot of the lifting here in this next one.
Nick, we're not picking it now. I just want to know. Nick, the thing is, it's not a theme. This is not a theme selection. It's not like cooking. Cooking is not the third.
I just thought we were starting a new podcast. I think we should.
We're starting a cooking podcast. Nick. We're picking the name.
I'm just hungry. Let's.
Here's the thing. I want to go back and forth before we start. I want to show how much preparation we've done. I want you to tell me the third thing in a series of things that could be a potential topic that you've prepared so far. We're not going to discuss them. I want to show how good you are. Third thing. Okay, third thing. Return of the King, Lord of the Rings, the third one, I think.
Okay. What's the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles third movie? We're gonna look this up.
Off the dome, Nick. These are things you've done research on.
I was supposed to do research on this?
No, that's an intro topic, Nick. I just need to know how good you are at coming up with the third things.
Okay, I do wish that Secret of the Ooze was
you're buying me a lot of time, bud. It's gonna be like I'm gonna pass that right back.
Okay, wait.
You can't come up with a third of anything.
No, what's a third of anything? I don't know. Storm of Swords, but that's not anything. That's nothing, what? Jeff. That's not funny. That's not funny at all, Jeff. What the hell?
Prisoner of Azkaban, I think, is the third Harry Potter thing. See, this isn't hard.
It's hard when you're dumb like me. I don't know.
What's the third? Okay, Nick, here, I'll throw you a softball, bud. He will call it whatever the year is that the Lakers won their third ring. Okay, how about that?
Okay, that actually is not as easy as you think. The answer is like 1952 or something, or 1949.
Who's gonna call you on that?
Okay. Can I talk to you about something here that I didn't know?
Okay, another one. Rocky 3. Okay, keep going.
Rocky. That's nothing. Jeff, you just said 3 at the end of it. That's nothing.
It's the one where Apollo Creed dies. Okay, keep going.
I have a problem, Jeff. I have a problem. We may have been committing false advertising this whole year, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Three Ninjas Kick Back is the third edition, the third movie of the Three Ninjas series.
No, hold on.
I've been lied to. I'm so sorry. I must have made a mistake.
No.
Three Ninjas Knuckle Up is the second one, Jeff. It's Knuckle Up is the second one, Jeff.
I'm
an idiot.
Nick! Hold on.
What is Knuckle
Hold
Up?
on, I'm taking my headset off. Okay, I'm back. Oh, no. I'm back.
I don't know, Knuckle Up. I'm sorry, Jeff. I didn't know.
Is this real? Is this real? I'm not even going to Google it. I'm going to trust you.
It is. It is.
And it's in a show of faith that you deserve none of.
I don't deserve anything. Okay, we can move on to the fourth installment, and this can be High Noon at Mega Man.
Hold on, Nick. Wait, here, hold on.
Yeah.
It's not too late. There's still one episode of this podcast where we can fix it, and we can make it be. So, what was the second installment?
The second installment was Knuckle Up.
Okay, here we go, bud. Knuckle Up. To the Year Started podcast. It's a podcast born Phoenix-like from the ashes. Whoo boy, of this year's podcast.
Yeah, this is a whole
it's
new
not.
podcast.
It's Nick. No, not yet. This is the same podcast. We have some corrections to make. Before we move into next year's podcast, we do want to make an announcement. This year's podcast has had a typo, a verbal typo. We've this entire time been saying kick back.
We actually meant knuckle up. That was an easy mix-up.
In post, I will now go back every single episode where we made any sort of kickback reference, and I will now edit in knuckle up. Nick, can you say knuckle up like 3 different ways so I can edit that in?
Knuckle up. Knuckle up. Knuckle up.
All right. So this is our last episode of the year we started a podcast, Knuckle Up. We're a couple of friends, half a continent apart, that have a very... Man, Nick, I cannot believe you did this to me.
I'm really sorry.
Think about it.
We could have been Secrets of the Ooze the whole time.
Was that the second installment of
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Yeah,
pretty good.
That could have been it. That's what I mean. Like, we could have done that. Because if it was Knuckle Up, I don't even know what that means. I don't know that I would have picked this, Nick. But we did. We just called it Kickback the entire time.
You literally caught the pun. The pun is Buckle Up. But, like, instead of buckle,
I did it organically. It's a good... Man, you know what?
Pretty good pun.
This is a mistake, but... Man, it would have been so great if it would have been a mistake that you made like 51 weeks ago, I'd say.
Yeah. Well,
Man, I did not expect this is where this would go, but we're here. We'll figure out what we're going to do, what the next podcast is going to be. I don't think we could do Kickback. I feel like maybe we've tested the waters a little bit much. We'll try to maybe test the waters of a different franchise. But yeah, so
I'm gonna have something really good for next week.
Okay.
I just want to let you know. Okay. For our sequel.
Yeah. So would you say I should knuckle up?
I would say knuckle up. But yeah, I would say definitely knuckle up.
It's so good. It's so
pretty good.
Like, I'm so mad. Good. I'm getting more mad at you the longer we do this.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Oh my goodness. Oh man. Okay, Nick, it's Christmas or whatever.
Christmas or whatever. Who cares anymore? Christmas is dumb now that I'm not even kicking back. I mean,
yeah. Now that we're just knuckling up and getting ready to go into Christmas, so we have to do something. Last year we talked about. I went back and listened about terrible random Christmas things. This year I was like looking for questions and things, and I texted you this. I just want to do it briefly because like I already feel like this is going to be an episode. That I don't know, like when we switched this to bi-weekly, now I have 1,000 things I want to get into. But anyways, Nick, okay, so I was looking at things, I didn't find anything cool. I've just tried to come up with another random question myself using my own brain cells. Knuckle up, here we go.
Let's not overdo it, Jeff. Let's not overdo it.
Nick, I have 51 weeks of knuckling up to get into this podcast.
You're right.
There's so many good puns to have. Nick, okay, I want to know. If you could have a Christmas present that you could, like any Christmas present, you can pick whatever you want, but you can only keep it so long as nobody knows that you have it. And as soon as they do, it's gone. What would you pick?
Wait. You say nobody knows I have it. Do you mean nobody I'm related to? Nobody that I like? I want to be super clear on this. Is this just people I know that need to not know about it?
Yeah, no, we're talking. If anybody knows, I guess. Hold on, I should. Okay,
can
amnesty
can
on
the bank know? Can like some like nondescript person that I don't give a crap about.
Here's where I'll draw the line.
Okay.
Anything that is like a person cannot know unless they're listening to this podcast right now, and you can't make them listen to this podcast. Like,
so the cheap answer in here is that I really would love just like $1 million in like a checking account that can like that. You know what I mean? That nobody knows about.
Hey, Nick. Yeah. I'm just saying, maybe you could shoot a little higher. I mean, $1 million is cool, but like,
you're right. But like, I mean, I can't really do much with more than $1 million that nobody can know. Like, if I try to buy a house with that, that's not going to pull it. But if I order DoorDash every day for the rest of my life, then it's fine. If my wife's just like, you really have to budget yourself on eating out, Nick. I mean, yeah, sure, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
Hey, Nick,
has it affected our savings? No, it's fine.
Hey, Nick, why would you do that? Why would you say that? Because like, I feel like maybe like, what if a random teller happens to like pull you up or whatever, and they're like, hey, this guy has $1
I will
million.
never go-
That's
Jeff,
very weird.
Jeff, I don't ever go to talk to human beings
Nicholas?
in person
Okay,
as it is.
I understand.
Once I have this deep, dark secret that will go away the moment that a teller knows, I will never interact with a teller for the rest of my life.
Hey, Nick,
I will go to my grave.
Hey, bud.
Yeah,
I don't want to.
yeah.
I don't want to I don't want to burst your bubble, but like even that. Okay, so fine, not a teller. Nicholas, I work in finance, and
Yeah.
I do. We have all kinds of like. If you just had $1 million randomly show up in your account one day, like, bud, we would notice.
Man,
Like, that would be
man.
gone so fast based on the rules of this.
Man.
So, like, for sure, that like you can't get $1 million bucks. That's not
Can't
you
get $1
just do
million
that.
bucks.
I mean, but Nick, what I would say, you might be able to just get free DoorDash whenever you want. Like, I feel like that might be a power that you could get for Christmas.
I mean, the flip side of that is that at some point Jen's gonna be like, "How the are you getting?"
Okay, fair.
Why are
Okay,
you
fair.
getting pokey for the 6th time this week? You got pokey today for lunch. What's wrong with you?
And you know when you get the extra salad, it's $4, and it's not worth half that.
It's true.
Okay.
It's true.
Okay, so you can't get $1 million. Can't get your free pokey, but like you got to like, come on, there's got to be something that you can take. It's Christmas, Nick.
It's Christmas. I mean, it's hard because I'm trying to think now of like things that I could hide really well, and like. You know what I could hide really well? I could hide like a computer upgrade. Like I could just get like an entire computer upgrade and like nobody would ever have to know. I'd just be like, yeah. Because my desktop is definitely 10 years old. So, you know, it's like 9 years old and like one
dude,
part is like 5 years old or something.
I thought of a great gift for you that like you could not even know and like nobody could even know. If I could give you the gift of a keyboard and mouse that like makes the sound so that you can have that tactile experience of hearing you clicking and typing, but it didn't show up on an audio recording. That is the sort of magic I'm looking for this Christmas.
That'd be very magical. Can I propose to you the idea of a keyboard and mouse that only I hear the annoying sound?
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
But I hear it much louder. I hear it the way you hear it now. You know what I mean?
I'm totally down for you to suffer as long as it doesn't mean I do. Like, yeah, whatever.
That's my present to you, Jeff. That's my present to you.
Oh, okay.
Where I suffer for your benefit.
Yeah, that's always what I tell people is I always want people to suffer. That's really what brings me joy.
This thing called Schadenfreude.
Yeah,
I can't pronounce it. It doesn't matter.
It's fine.
I have no good. Do you have a good answer? Because I have no good answer.
Okay, here's my thing. It's really hard because like you think of things that like you'd really like, and at the end of the day, I do feel like people will find out. But here's the thing that I would like: it's a magic power. So to be fair, this doesn't exist. I want the ability. Well, I don't know. Anyways, what I would like is the ability to go into a situation and act as my entire self, but be able to like fast forward through the entire experience. And the reason why I say this, I've said this on the show, almost certainly said this on the show before. I hate teeth stuff so bad. And
oh God.
Then the other day, like when I wrote this as a thing that I wanted to say, here's my thing. I went to the dentist and they did the thing, like they're like poking your teeth and like making sure they're good or whatever, cleaning them out, and they do the poke. And then one of them, for the first time in a very, 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 very long time, one of them stuck into my tooth, which means I have a cavity, which is terrible. As a person who does not like teeth things, literally I could have died in that moment. Like means the entire rest of the time I'm thinking like, oh, I have a cavity. Does that mean we have to do it right now? Does that like, oh my gosh, that means they're going to have to like numb me. They're going to poke like the thing in my mouth and make me numb and do all the things and drill it out. And I'm like Nick, in that moment, like I just like, I would love to just fast forward to the point where I'm leaving and saying bye. I hate teeth stuff so much. And I know a lot of things that you suffer through, you should like, they make you stronger and blah, blah, blah. But like, I don't care how strong getting my teeth fixed is. Yep. Like, I don't care. Like, I will take this new weakness. Nick, if I could just be myself, but not actually have to go through it. That's my superpower I want for Christmas for getting my teeth fixed.
I 100%. If I could do that for all things vaguely medical, of like, I'm not even asking for like perfect health here. I'm just asking for my superpower to be that like my body behaves as if I went to do all of the things. but I don't have to experience going to the doctor and setting up doctor's appointments and waiting and the guilt of like, no, I haven't flossed very much. No, I'm sorry.
No. I feel so seen. It's like
I'm sorry that I haven't been flossing. Yes, I understand that it's a big deal. Yes, I understand. I'm so sorry.
Nick, okay, pause. Okay, we'll move on.
Yeah.
But I do want to say, you said a thing that is literally... Okay, we talk about the social anxiety things. So like, there ain't no getting around it. I am not great at flossing. I'm sorry. I brush my teeth good. I don't floss good. And when I go to the dentist, there ain't no hiding that fact.
Correct.
Like, I know that you know that I know that you know.
So my sister told me that like the motivation that she got like was when her dentist told her, I forget the exact thing that they told her, but she was like, oh yeah, my dentist once told me that it's like someone not wearing any deodorant or something.
Oh no!
And I was like, you didn't motivate me better. You just made me feel even worse about it, Kristen. God.
It makes me want to have the habit better. It just doesn't make me any actually better at the habit.
Correct.
But oh man, I literally like, I think through like, oh man, should I just like apologize before we start? Like,
can I write you a letter preemptively?
Yeah. Well, it's because like I'll tell you what, Nick.
And I hand it to them and I say, read this, and then we never speak of it again, please.
I'll tell you what, like I want to, I know that eventually I got to go to the dentist. Like that's important. You got to do it. But like, man, if it's just like slightly cloudy outside, gotta cancel it. No, oh man,
you don't know, it could rain.
I stubbed my toe real rough last week, and like that's not safe.
I'm not feeling up to it. I'm not feeling up to it. I had a cough earlier. It was after I choked on the water bottle that I was chugging in anxiety about this appointment. But don't worry about that. Like.
I did test myself for COVID 17 times to try to get out of it. It was negative, but you never know. As they say, like maybe the 18th time is the one.
The rapid tests are notoriously only like 80% reliable or something.
Like, yeah.
Okay, we gotta move on from this.
Yeah,
I'm completely with you, but it's so bad. No, it's just us wallowing in our own anxiety at this point.
I think that should be the next podcast subtitle.
Wallowing in our own anxiety.
Anyways, yeah. So Nick, why don't you take us out of this a little bit? Okay.
Jeff, I have been meaning to do this as a topic for quite a long time, which is fitting. Jeff, do you procrastinate a lot? You're a millennial. This comes down. This is near and dear to both of our hearts, I'm sure. Do you feel like you procrastinate a lot?
Yeah, like I mean, of course I do. I do find it to be the thing that I probably like fight against the most. Like if I could like pick a thing. Okay, like real talk. If I could like pick a thing to magically do better at, like being immune to the effects of procrastination would be a thing that I feel like I would benefit greatly from.
Right. So, and that attitude right there is exactly why I wanted to do it, is because I feel like the whole procrastination thing is very much framed as like we all suck at like caring enough. But in reality, whenever I procrastinate, I feel like a big fat butthead, like a big, like, oh, I'm going to regret this later. And then I just continue to do it anyways.
And proceed to regret it later, like almost without exception.
Right. So I think that this is like a really big thing that we often frame imperfect behavior as like a moral failing. And I don't really view it that way. And I kind of just think of it usually as like not even mistakes as just like a reality of like circumstance. Like the same way some people aren't great about like controlling like their eating, even if they're like otherwise very healthy people. Find people who have like a really bad sweet tooth or just like can't help themselves but overeat or whatever it may be. And I think that those things are not like a moral failing. I don't think it's a sign of like laziness. I don't consider myself a lazy person. I usually feel like I come out of days like working my ass off, but at the same time, I do definitely put off things. And so, with all of that said, I read a really good article, and Jen sent me a really good article about a researcher named Piers Steele. He's a psychologist at the University of Calgary. There's a couple different articles about this about this guy's research. He's done a lot of research on procrastination, and his feelings were I took it to be valid because it confirmed my wants and desires for it to not be a moral failing. So I really appreciate him doing research that was specifically tailored to,
of course,
to confirm my biases.
Yeah,
but more importantly, like that basically agrees with the sentiment. He's done a ton of research. The article that I read was called "Getting Over Procrastination" in the New Yorker. Really good on procrastination. Was that procrastination was linked really positively with impulsiveness. So people who were impulsive and had trouble controlling, with self-control, also procrastinate. Not because they found that they didn't have a good work ethic, not because they found that they were like lazy, and especially not because they didn't understand the consequences of their actions. They weren't people who were going through the thought process like, ho, I'll put this off for later so I can have fun now. They almost always were. Most people who procrastinate are basically guilt-ridden about procrastinating. And like that lines up with what you were saying about like it's the thing that I wish I could work on the most, right?
Yeah. No, this is a great therapy session. Please continue. I feel yeah, this is Nick, this is applicable. Continue.
Oh, okay. So Steele said that about 95% of people who procrastinate wish they could reduce the tendency. And so it's not like a dude who steals because they like love the thrill of stealing. Like that's not a thing that's happening to most of us, right? So he got the opportunity to do two different or he's done a bunch of research, but one of his studies was he had access to data from a bunch of twins who some were fraternal and some were identical. And so the hope with this was the ability to like determine whether or not the trait is something that we get from nurture or from biological.
Like is it genetic or not? Yeah.
Exactly, right. Basically he did find that the trait was moderately heritable. He said about 46% of the tendency to procrastinate and 49% of the tendency towards impulsiveness was attributable to genes. And the estimated genetic correlation between the two traits was 1, which is perfect, or at least as close to perfect as you could possibly get. So the interesting thing with that to me is that like I have never associated those two things, but he considers them to be two sides of the same coin. Basically, just a lack of self-control in short-term moments. I think that the way that the reason that I care about like whether or not we talk about it as a moral failing is because when I was young, like I have totally healthy, like freaking, authority figures in my life, but like I definitely recall being told like, oh, stop being lazy, stop putting this off for later. If you want to be on top of stuff, if you want to be productive, you need to do this stuff now. It's like, and framed as like you're being lazy for putting off homework or whatever it was as a kid, right? And I don't really think that that's the actual solution, and it doesn't line up with the actual method to kind of combat it, and it doesn't line up with what I read and Steele's findings. His findings were basically just set short-term goals, small short-term achievable goals, not long-term goals. And the other thing that he found was that people who procrastinated a lot and were very impulsive also were very bad about like breaking down on long-term goals. Like they would either set goals too far, get overwhelmed by their own goals, or just lose track of those goals over time. And so he found that setting small, short-term achievable goals, like in this next hour, I want to do this. In this next 20 minutes, I want to write this much of my paper. In the next 30 minutes, I want to read this section of this art or this book or this, whatever it is.
Oh man, that's super. Like, it's an interesting pairing. Like, it makes sense. Like, it makes sense. I just don't know that I would have intuitively paired those two things together. I don't know.
Do you find that you're either impulsive or a person who has trouble with like long-term goals? Because I actually don't think I am, but
I do find myself struggling with impulsiveness and long-term goals. I am much more of a person where, this is what I was thinking about the entire time we were talking. The times where I succeed the most is where my impulse aligns with going in the direction of what I would consider to be like a long-term goal.
Okay.
Like to put that professionally, if I have a particular ambition that I want to like achieve, if the work that I'm wanting to do organically, like just the things that like draw me to it, are the things that I want to dive into, my impulse is going to dive into those things. if those things are also the exact things that if I could write down on a piece of paper the top 5 things I should work on to get where I want to go, that is where I do really, 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 really well. The parts that I feel like I've struggled the most in my life, where I wish that I could write those 6 things down or 5 things down and just force myself to do them, are when those are out of alignment, where
you just have no natural urge or tendency to want to do the thing, right?
Yeah, like I really am. And it's like, it either needs to be a natural desire to want to do the thing, or it's a thing that I've made a habit, like where like it doesn't matter if it's if it's a thing that is something I want to do or don't, it's just a thing that I do. And again, I feel like that just kind of is just a different flavor of impulse. Like an impulse out of desire and an impulse out of habit is still just an impulse. And so I feel
that's
like
a good way to put it.
I am definitely so easily like influenced by I'm a sucker for the things I want to do or the things that I'm used to doing, and that's kind of my default behavior. If that can work very well for me, or very not so much well for me.
That makes perfect sense. So I have 2 comments with that. One is there any way that you think that I could create a career change where I do what you're talking about, like make a career change that takes advantage of the things that I impulsively want to do? The only 2 things I ever really impulsively want to do are argue with people on the internet about basketball or ride a bike. Do you know if there's any career path that takes advantage of one of those 2 things?
Or both. I mean,
both.
I feel like...
Is there like a bike riding basketball
NBA
journalist job that I could take on? Like that thing?
downhill NBA debate team.
Exactly. But no, okay. So that makes perfect sense. I like the way you frame that. Do you feel like you lose track of long-term goals, or that like you get overwhelmed by long-term goals, or is that like not an issue for you?
I don't get Also, Nick, stop pushing the buttons.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
I'm gonna kill you. No. So I don't feel like I lose track of long-term goals. I feel like oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just to interject because I forgot to say it earlier. Your comment about ambition is something else that he talks about. Is that people that are that procrastinate are often labeled as people without ambition, or like not labeled, but like spoken of that way, and it is not really a correlation at all. Like people can be really successful and also want really like lofty goals that they're willing to put in a lot of work for, but also have issues with procrastination. Like they're not mutually exclusive.
I feel like on a scale of 0 to 10, my ambition has to like be at a 9.5 to 10. Like I'm an extremely ambitious / optimistic person. Like I want to achieve a lot, and I want to do a lot, and I have a unhealthy confidence that I can do so, which like honestly that reflects itself in like overcommitting myself to things, or like setting unrealistic deadlines for things, and etc.
Right.
But with regard to long-term goals, to go back to that, my thing is I have fuzzy long-term goals, but I don't really get caught up in like how I'm going to get there. I just know that they're almost more long-term directions. And I don't really think of it as a pass or fail. I feel like it's the sort of thing like, oh, if I can get to this point or anywhere near it, like that would be fantastic. Not if I get to this point or not. Like it's not a binary pass fail. It's a how like am I moving in this direction? And with that as like the background for how I think about things, that's where it really works well if I'm just going in a direction that my impulse takes me. I'm not the problem with having yourself be driven more or less by impulse or habit is it's not super precise where you're going. You have ideas of where you're going, but it's not a thing that you could necessarily write out on paper and then want to be held accountable to, a year later or 2 years later or something like that. If I can have a general direction that I want to go, and I really, really, really want to go that direction, I could figure out like the details along the way, and it works out well. But yeah. I struggle, Nick. I struggle with procrastination like crazy. I'm also when I have to, or I can trick my brain into doing it. Like there's two different ways. One, under necessity, I buckle down and I am the hardest worker I've ever met.
I think that's like basically how most people feel. I'm not just like, I think most people, or a lot of people procrastinate. Reading this, like a big percent of people think that procrastination is like a big problem for them. But I think that's how most people feel. I feel like once the pressure's on, we just all just get down, and like, that's the reason everyone talks about, late night studying and like overnight finishing projects in high school and college, right? Is because when push comes to shove, we all just like, oh, I gotta do this.
And I'll say, like, the same is true as far as like getting things done. If it is something that I'm just genuinely, like, I'm a genuinely curious person, there are things that I love, like the challenge of, be it a technical challenge or a business challenge or a logical challenge, like, or even like a very, like a mathematical challenge. Like it has a definite answer. We have to work hard to get to it. I find that really, really fun. And so in those instances, and again, like it's not procrastination, not because I'm like being very diligent about making sure I work enough. It's because my impulse is to work so much because I love it so much. Like I'm having so much fun. Like that is the sort of thing that energizes me. And in those instances, like the whole idea of procrastination is crazy. Like I don't want to procrastinate. I can't. I'm working like 16 hours a day on this, whether I'm like sitting at a computer or not, or like
Right.
I'm working on it in my head. I'm dreaming about the problem, like, and I'm having fun. And that's like that's the other side of that. As a person who procrastinates, like I also have those moments where I want nothing more than to do the thing that I'm doing. And that the trade-off is, if it's not a thing that I am passionate about or I'm up against a deadline against, like it's really easy to just fall into like, well, there's probably something else to do. Let me check my phone.
I think you've nailed it. I think you've totally nailed it. Like it's creating work or making like trying to work towards a place where work is also a thing that is a natural impulse for you to go towards, right? Like you're impulsively drawn to it because then that brings out the hardworking part of yourself, right? Like that brings out the part of you that is like, well, I'm a hard worker. I'm willing to put in a lot of energy and I'm willing to drive myself insane on this project or whatever it is.
One last thing I'll toss on here. I don't know if you have anything else or not, but
not especially.
I mentioned at some point on the show where, I listen to the same sort of music over and over again on repeat like a crazy person. And part of the reason why I do that is the music that I listen to while I'm deeply diving into something, and exclusively when I am needing to dive deeply into something, either by necessity or by passion. And so when I do that, it is like music is a really powerful thing in that way of, I may not be in the mood, but if I put this music on, I get everything pulled up, I get some coffee or whatever next to me. Like my brain is a sucker for like getting sucked into, like, it's like the sort of thing, like once you get started, like once you're 5 minutes in, if you can get past that first 5 minutes, your brain is engaged, and now it's the thing that you're passionate about, like getting done for whatever the motivation is almost like it's almost an aside. Like you're into it, you're enjoying it, you're working on it, it's engaging, and that's why I do that weird thing where I listen to the same song on repeat for, I don't know, at this time probably 60,000 hours, because it is like, it's like a cheat code for being able to focus on stuff.
No, that makes perfect sense. One of the things that he also talked about was the way that the way that like some people could cope with their procrastination is to make their distractions more out of reach. And that's not the same thing, but it's totally you working in that same way of like, I'm creating the mental headspace where I'm in the focused zone instead of the zone where I'm reaching to procrastinate, right? And it's like the opposite side of that coin, I suppose, but it makes perfect sense to me. And I have a similar approach with music. Like there's just certain music that I know, like if I'm like constantly looking to change a song after every single song because I'm like, oh, you know what, I'm not in the mood for the rest of this album or whatever, then it's gonna contribute to my distraction. And you've got it nailed, man. That sounds like the right attitude.
And I had never even thought about this, but I like you saying that, it is 100% two sides of the same coin, because in addition to playing that music on repeat, I also close Outlook. I close Teams, which is our chat thing at work.
Yep.
I set my phone on the other side of the room. Like it is it is definitely a very intense. Like nobody can, short of coming into my office or whatever, and like coming in person. You are not. I cannot get notifications on whatever it is.
Right.
Like just cannot. It's not even like it's limited. I cannot. You cannot get a hold of me.
I honestly should try that because like that's you described several of my own shortfallings, and like you're just more and more committed to stopping them. That's smart.
Yeah, well, just do it for a decade and fail at it, and you'll figure out the parts along the way that you do bad.
Cool. So in a decade from now, I'll be productive, please?
No, you can listen to this podcast and you'll learn a lot of steps. It's probably only like 8 years. You'll be fine.
Oh, cool. Okay, cool. As long as it's just 8.
Nick, can we move on to a quick thing?
We can totally move on.
Tiny topic.
Yes.
Okay, we've talked about the Hubble Space Telescope. We've talked about the James Webb Space Telescope, JWST.
Yes.
So, James Webb was supposed to launch back, I think, originally like 2019, and it's got delayed. One really big delay happened because something global pandemic something. That's really suck. Anyway,
can't imagine how it affects it, but whatever.
That is gotten to the point where now we're finally coming up on a launch date. When we originally were supposed to record, I was going to say, Nick, this is going to launch the day after we release this episode on Tuesday morning at 6 a.m. Central. It's been delayed again, though. It's now Christmas Eve, which, Nick, if I could, I mean, I don't know how I feel about that because legitimately this has been worked on since the 90s. I don't know. I want that pressure. I don't want that pressure on my Christmas Eve. Like,
that's a lot.
If it's a 5% chance that things go bad, that's not great. If it's like a 1% chance that things go bad, that's not great. I mean, obviously, I want everything to go good. I don't know. I have so many emotions about the thing. I'm getting very excited, but also very nervous. And the idea that it might be on Christmas Eve, that's a little stressful. My son is excited. We've talked about it a bit. I'm very excited to actually watch the launch. I haven't seen what time it is. So at the time of recording this, I don't know that they've actually released the time that they're planning on Christmas Eve. However, I will note, if you are a person with small children, that is nearly irrelevant, being that you will be up late the night before and up at 3 a.m. when your kids wake up. So there's a very narrow window. I guess if they're launching at like 2:20 a.m. Central Time, that would be difficult to be up for. But I'm very much looking forward to it. I hope that everything goes good. If they could stop having delays, that would be fantastic. At least the delays now are like 2 days long instead of like a year long and whatever.
Yeah, but that is I gotta say that is like definitely stressful that it keeps getting delayed. Are the reasons that it's getting delayed problematic or anything? Do we know?
This most recent one, I haven't read exactly what was the reason why, but I'll tell you one of them that was very, very stressful. I didn't even tell you about. I don't think so. They were moving it, and like one of the straps broke, and like we're talking like this. I mean, this thing is huge. It like caused the entire structure to shake, and they were very worried. And they had to check it was like after they had already like packed it up, and they like had to like open it all up and check it all out. It all ended up being okay. Like a backup strap had like saved the day. They got like reconnected back up. But like, oh my gosh, Nick, that was so stressful. Like the idea that, because like there's no like, oh, we broke this one thing and now we have to replace, this quarter of it or whatever that got broke. Like, a quarter of it that got broke, that's like 7 years.
That's a lot.
Scrap the entire mission. So it all was okay. It all got a clean bill of health, and I don't think it was anything serious. I mean, they only delayed it a couple days, so that very well could just be weather. So I want this thing to be up in the sky and to unfold and to be good, and we can get excited for all the crazy good science that's going to happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyways, I needed you to also be slightly anxious and our listeners to be anxious.
I am very excited. Like you saying that they broke a strap or whatever is just, that's terrifying.
It is terrifying.
But I'm excited. Christmas Eve, let's go.
Christmas Eve, let's go. Let's wish for good things that people don't know about. Okay, Nick. the
Yes.
last topic. I've been excited about this. I don't. We
Okay.
don't talk much. I just kind of vaguely know of what we're going to talk about.
So, Jeff, you and I have been listening to, and me at your recommendation, a very popular podcast by Malcolm Gladwell, who I think is a very, very fun, entertaining, and intelligent guy. But my first exposure to Malcolm Gladwell was like years and years ago now, 10 years ago, as I found out recently from my research today. Malcolm Gladwell had a book that was about the 10,000 hour rule, which is basically that you need 10,000 hours of purposeful practice, as I think he calls it, to become a master of something. Okay, and he writes a book about this called Outliers, where he talks about the concept. And he was invited to a very popular sports conference. That's a sports analytics conference called the MIT Sloan Sports Conference, I believe this is the full name. At MIT every year, and he was invited to talk with a panel including former Rockets coach and Rockets GM, so Jeff Van Gundy, the coach, and Daryl Morey, the GM, about Tracy Mcgrady, not just Tracy Mcgrady, but about the topic of the 10,000 hours, and basically about how Tracy Mcgrady had not lived up to that 10,000 hours. And the reason this matters to me is that I think that Tracy Mcgrady is a really interesting case of like this bizarre way that we treat people and talent. So Tracy McGrady this is not going to be as as big of a deep dive on like any of the stats about Tracy McGrady. I'll give some cursory ones or whatever, but so Tracy McGrady, for people who don't know, was an NBA All-Star in the early 2000s. Was especially good from 2001 to 2005. You could probably argue when, but
no. And like just to interrupt, to add credence to that, I mean, when I was in middle school, I had multiple T-Mac shirts and shoes and etc. that I wore. So
he was a phenom for a couple of years, right? Like for a couple of years, it was like a conversation.
The amount of
with
hype
kids
was insane.
Right. When I remember for years, me and my like two best friends would talk about, okay, who's the best shooting guard? Is it Kobe, Tracy McGrady, or Vince Carter? And Vince Carter was out of that conversation pretty fast.
Oh man, yeah,
so,
for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's legitimate. So for a couple of years, he was that guy, but he didn't really have playoff success. He didn't win a playoff series for like the first like 8 years of his career, and he didn't win a playoff series as the only like main star, which was kind of like this weird de facto way that we were all judging everybody. It was like whether or not they could be the guy on a championship team and be like the one alpha that did this stuff. And so later on in his career, and I should also say, Tracy McGrady was not just like a phenom. He is, if you could describe what you would want a basketball player to be, you'd basically be describing Tracy McGrady. He was tall, insanely long arms, athletic as hell, could jump out the gym, great shooter, passed it well, handled the ball well. He's basically like, there wasn't a skill that he didn't have. There wasn't a physical attribute that he didn't have. There wasn't anything that wasn't there and available. Like he had every tool in the box, whether it was like a God-given one or not, right?
I mean, T-Mac was the man.
Yes, absolutely, right? So, at this Sloan Sports, and so he played for the Rockets under Jeff Van Gundy, who's generally a well-respected coach, and I still think is pretty fun. And at this panel in 2011, they talked about McGrady, and after Gladwell talked about his central thesis, which was that 10,000 hours, right? Van Gundy said McGrady was only 1,000 hours of practice, and he said, but he should be a Hall of Fame player. He was otherworldly, and it was talent, basically, was what he said. He said, he's as close as I've ever seen somebody with a perfect body and a good mind. And that was the overall sentiment, was he was and this conversation continued with the three of them, and that was basically the overall sentiment, was McGrady should have practiced more, didn't practice enough. And I want to say, he was the coach for McGrady. He probably saw him more than I saw him. And, maybe he had a better insight into McGrady than I did. But I like basically will never be able to fully comprehend this line of thought that somehow Tracy McGrady didn't live up to his promise. So in McGrady's early career, he comes in the league at 18. Okay, he comes in the league at 18, so he has basically just high school, and whatever the hell high school he went to is not some giant. He went to Mount Zion Christian Academy in North Carolina, and Auburndale, Florida. So he probably did play for good high schools, and he probably played for competitive high schools and for AAU and CYO, probably more AAU teams and whatever. But that's not the important thing. A lot of his development happens in the NBA, and he basically skyrockets from a young guy with talent into otherworldly production that is basically akin to like LeBron or like Kobe or Jordan.
I've heard of them.
Yeah, like basically only them. He has a season where he averages 32, 6, and 7, which is by any standards ever insane. His advanced stats all echo this, that he was essentially as good as you could possibly be. Now, I think that stats don't fully capture the full impact of players a lot of times, but stats are very, very high on Tracy McGrady's performance. And he does this all on very bad teams. And there's two things that come out of this time period for him in Orlando in particular, where he's on very bad teams that are getting knocked out of the playoffs in the first round. Sometimes they're getting swept. And it's one of the two things. It's one that's like, he doesn't have the killer instinct to hold it up in the playoffs. He's not a hard worker, and he doesn't have whatever it is that leads a team to success. Well, he individually dominates, and in the playoffs, there are seasons where he leads the playoffs in scoring points per game, and where he leads the playoffs in a bunch of advanced metrics, all at the age of like 22 to 24. Like this is all in the age of like 21 to 24. I'm sorry, 21 to 24. He has 4 consecutive seasons of 4 consecutive playoffs, I should say, because he missed one year. His team missed the playoffs, of averaging over 30 points a game in the playoffs. And for context for everybody else, contemporaries, Kobe Bryant, Dwayne Wade, James Harden, none of them have done this. Not a single one of them has done this for a whole play.
That's a lot. That's wild.
Right. That's like the best contemporaries you could have, except for Michael Jordan. And the reason I'm saying all of this is to say, I basically feel like the reason that Tracy McGrady is lambasted is that, and this is a very common thing I think with people who are overachievers, is or talented, or like or rather not just overachievers who are naturally talented. I think that overachievers who are naturally talented are expected to be one in a generation sometimes. Like I'm not sure what kind of outcome is like appropriate for them to feel that he lived up to his talent. Because if you average 30 for 4 seasons in a row, if you're doing everything, if you are a team player, if you play defense, I guess there's people who think that he doesn't play defense. Okay, that's fair. But lots of great players didn't play defense in the NBA. Didn't play amazing defense in the NBA, I should say. But he's a team player who scored incredibly, held it up in the playoffs, did this for multiple years in a row. I basically don't see a problem, except that he wasn't the greatest of all time. And I see this a lot like in the NBA, where it's basically like if you're not like Shaq, the expectation for Shaq was that he had to be the greatest of all time. Otherwise, we think of that as like a failure,
right? Goat or bust. I mean, that's LeBron too,
right? And I think sometimes we give these experts that talk about this stuff a little too much credit when they are tearing down someone else, but their expectations are unreasonable.
Mm-hmm.
So a former assistant coach, Johnny Davis, said, so the team, or the people on the panel make a point about success getting in the way for McGrady, that his success stopped him from working harder because he thought that he was already doing great. And I just find this attitude to be a little bit dismissive of the success that he's already having. And I feel like the expectations are a little bit unreasonable. So here's a quote from one of his former assistant coaches who said, quote, "I'm sure there were times when he wondered, well, why are you questioning my work ethic? I just gave you 37 points, Davis said. But had he worked harder, maybe that was a 47-point night. Maybe there's no need for him to try to make one at the buzzer. Had he done this the whole game, it wouldn't have even been close. Only he knows that. We look at it and we say, man, he's not working hard enough. But sometimes guys have an easiness about them that makes it appear that way. And again, only Tracy can answer that." And my response to this is, I have never heard anyone ever expect a 47-point night out of anyone. I've like literally never heard that for any player in the history of anything.
Yeah.
I've never heard of anyone getting a 37-point night and somehow being criticized for not doing enough. This seems unreasonable, but it is an expectation that we put on people who we somehow place our they check the boxes, and so we expect them to be better than anything that's ever come before. Oh, you crushed it on your freaking calculus stuff in high school. Why aren't you Einstein? What? What? I'm and I don't know. Is there a parallel to this in football of like players who are who have expectations set way too high?
Oh, I mean, yeah, certainly. I mean, I could think of a handful of like, oh, if they were honestly on the NFL side, it's more like if you are not this big dramatic wide receiver, if you could just buckle down and focus and be, completely dedicated to the craft, you would, and a team player and not selfish at all, and etc. You would do so much better and all that. It's a weird the whole thing. I was just like thinking through, both my memory of T-Mac and then also just Googling a few stats here and there. And it is an interesting thing where he got to the level that he did probably, yeah. I mean, like, let's just assume it's true. By talent more so than dedication to practice or whatever. But also, I don't think it should be everybody's aspiration to be the most hardworking, number one, best person ever to grace this planet with their presence level of performance in something that ultimately is just their job.
Yeah.
Like that is it's a wild thing to talk through, like, well, oh, what could have been, because we certainly don't do that. Like, it's not like we're like, oh man, you were a pretty good neurosurgeon.
That's what I was. Yeah, sorry.
Had you spent 20 hours a day doing neurosurgery and research and such, you really could have changed this field. But since you only put in the typical 16 hours a day, you kind of left us hanging a little bit there. You could have done better,
Or for that matter, I feel like that same scrutiny could be applied basically across the board, right? Like, there's a lot of players who are 6'8". There's a lot of people, human beings, who are 6'8". Like, there's not, a ton. I don't run into one every day, but there's hundreds in the NBA. How come every single one of those guys isn't held up to the standard of Tracy Mcgrady gets compared to Kobe a lot because they came in at a similar time, they were friends, they both came in high school, played the same position. And so everyone says, why didn't he work like Kobe? Kobe wasn't as gifted athletically and with height. Like, Kobe was only 6'6", so he was only, 1% instead of 0.1% or whatever, who knows. But I mean, the expectation there, you can apply that to basically everyone, right? And you said about neurosurgeon or whatever. Yeah, I'm sure any neurosurgeon who worked 20 hours a day for their life would change the field, right? But it's an unrealistic expectation, and we're all marveled at the very, very, very few that ever who ever build the both the work ethic and the lifestyle, and also just circumstantially have everything come together. As a Kobe fan, I can tell you there's a lot of circumstances that came to success. But sorry, go ahead.
No, the other thing that I can't get out of my head is how tightly the two things you've brought tonight tie together. Because there's if your natural bent is to be Kobe Bryant, to show up at the gym at 4:00 in the morning and work for forever. Like, if that's your natural bent, to be Michael Jordan that shows up at the gym to outwork everybody on the field. If you're Tom Brady who's going to do studying a film for 100 hours more than anybody else is going to possibly do, that is part of your natural ability.
Yes,
it is in theory controllable. You could be a person who could do that just because you are alive and those hours have passed. But that does not mean that you are a person who's going to do that. Just but because you're capable.
Right. We don't hold the same scrutiny to every 4.0 student in college, right? If every 4.0 student who graduates with some kind of even if you just want to really narrow it down and be STEM degree, if you're every 4.0 math degree, person with a bachelor's in math has to work 14 hours a day, take their meals inside so that they don't have to waste time traveling to and from food places, ignore their social life so that they can revolutionize the field and technology. Nobody's ever held to the standard. There's no, I guess like, McGrady has said that he wasn't like a great practice person, but I just don't really care. I don't care if he didn't put in, X amount of hours according to a really good and insightful and smart author and a really good coach. I don't care that he didn't live up to their standards of hard work because he was wildly, wildly, wildly successful.
By any measure, honestly, like other than perfection, by any measure, he did great. Like had a great career. I mean, Nick, one of the things, like Nick, if you asked me, like, hey Jeff, what's like one of the craziest like highlights or series of highlights you've ever seen? T-Mac scoring 13 and 35 seconds is ridiculous. Yes. Like, what in the world?
It's insane.
Like, he made a mark on me 20 years ago or whenever that happened. Like, maybe not quite. Honestly, coming up on 20 years ago, that is, honestly, that makes me feel disgustingly sick. Like, holy cow. But no, like, I mean, the dude was a phenom. Like, he was amazing. And, I like, yes, if he had like this amazing drive to practice like an insane person that some people that have gotten to the NBA do or that are at the top of the NBA do, like, yeah, he would have been better. But he was here because of who he is, and he is who he is.
My addendum to that is that, like, he improved as a shooter from his early early career. And in his early career, he was playing behind Vince Carter, so it's not like apple to apple. He didn't play a lot, but like when he first came out of high school, he wasn't a contributor, and then he basically burst onto the scene. He bulked up and gained muscle. He became a better shooter. I don't really believe that you just wake up at 21 and are a 27 point per game player. Like, I just simply don't believe that doesn't have a ton of hard work that goes into that.
Yeah, it didn't happen to me at all.
Right. So, you can tell me that it's more natural talent than most people that are his contemporaries. Sure. Okay. But like, there's still a ton of work that goes into that. Sure, and it's wildly successful. And I think you're really pushing at the margins to ask someone to like improve over a career where, like, for 7 years in a row, he averaged over a 7-year period, he averaged 39 minutes a game, which, by the way, is a ton of hard work, and averaged 27 points a game. Which I know I didn't want to like dive into the stats and stuff. There's a bunch of advanced metrics that think highly of him. Some of them that don't as well, which is interesting because it's kind of like not consistent. But I basically just think, yeah, this guy was a stud and a killer. And when he wasn't hurt, he was playing his ass off. And there's a lot of people who are like, well, if he'd taken better care of his body, maybe he wouldn't have. I mean, okay, but he was for 5 years in a row, he's playing 41 minutes a night. Like, okay, he's laying it all out there. He's putting his body on the line, and he gained a lot of muscle mass over his years as a young guy. I mean, maybe he wasn't as focused with his work. That's probably fair, and I don't think that there's no criticism to be made of Tracy Mcgrady. But it's just like a weird standard that I don't really see applied to anyone except for like gifted athletes, and I not a fan. Not a fan.
So, all right, before we wrap up tonight, I do want to ask you. I'm willing to do mine first.
Do I think Malcolm Gladwell is a fraud? I don't know if I would take it that far. This is where we start the feud with a much larger podcast that I love. I've been bitching.
The internet is well ahead of us. Anyways, Nick, okay, you took that direction, opposite direction. NBA or honestly any sport, but like let's be honest, you're going to give an NBA answer.
It's true.
Who had the least physical gifts that was broken on the other end, that was thrust into a far different stratosphere than they should have physically been capable of because of how dedicated they were to putting in those 10,000 or 100,000 hours?
Dude, well, The NBA is a fun example for this because there's a lot of really short players there's like a handful of really short players who had a lot of success. Go ahead. Yeah.
Maybe just no one right off the top, but I do want to give a shout out because like I'm looking up above my I should literally take a picture because this is so perfect. I'm looking at my microphone, and right above my microphone is like all my sports stuff on my desk, but literally dead center is the Sports Illustrated edition of the year that the Shockers went to the Final Four, and then the very middle of that is Fred VanVleet.
Hell yeah.
Fred VanVleet, and oh my goodness, you could not possibly pick a better example of that, especially recently. Anyways,
so I know he's not actually 6'1". I think he's like, he looks to me like he's not 6'1", I should say.
I'm not 6'1", and he's definitely shorter than me. So
there you go. Okay, but I should say I meant like real short. Do you know who Earl Boykins is?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
I loved Earl Boykins. Earl Boykins played until he was 35, so I think like 13 years in the NBA. This dude was 5'5", and he just worked. He like was one of those guys that was like super feisty and energetic, and like all just like hustle, and every team that had him loved him. I mean, I can't even imagine going to bat and trying to like guard or be guarded by freaking NBA athletes at 5'5". I get intimidated by like good high school players or good pickup players, and I'm 6 feet tall. So like, I'm like, oh man, I don't want to get guarded by this guy. He can jump. He can touch the rim. Meanwhile, he's going up against the greatest athletes in the world for 13 years. If we're gonna call out like guys who didn't have it naturally, I think he was naturally gifted in other ways. Like he was fast, and I think he had good hops. I don't think he could dunk, but like
you would have to work really hard to make it at that height for sure.
Right. 5'5" in the NBA. Like what a freaking badass, honestly. And VanVleet's a good call out too. VanVleet's a great call out.
No, I hate it so much on the NFL side because it's impossible to like give any other answer that's not Tom Brady. Like you're talking somebody who just was an absolute nobody and going on to be probably what will turn into the best player of NFL history. I mean, if
kind of rude.
I mean, Nick, that's like if Michael Jordan was an undrafted free agent. Like legitimately, it's that crazy.
Yeah, no, that's wild.
Like coming out of college, if he was just nothing and just worked his way into being the best quarterback of all time. Like it is crazy. So anyways,
so I don't want to belabor this and keep going with stuff, but Larry Bird had a really weird high school career, and then like wasn't gonna play and and wasn't gonna play in college. I think that he went to a college but didn't like the college and like decided not to play for the college, and then like waited another year to go to a closer college or something like that.
Well, I know he played at Indiana. He played in one of the Missouri Valley teams because we used to play against them like 1,000 times at Wichita State when we were part of the Missouri Valley. Anyways, go ahead.
But it's not like fair because Bird had height, at least in a sport that is very dependent on height. He was 6'9", but I've never seen a 6'9" guy struggle so hard to dunk. And Bird was as a hater of the Celtics, deep down to my bones, Bird was a total badass and like kind of fits that mold of like, yeah, he kind of doesn't look like he should play the sport. Oh, and now he's a top 10 player all time. Okay, all right. Sort of similar to not the same as Brady. Brady sounds like a little bit more, like not a little bit, much more of an underdog story.
No,
but at the same time,
no, that is a good comparison. I mean, there are obviously lots of different caveats on both of those, but
yeah.
Definitely. You would not have guessed. Honestly, like even Steph is kind of a similar example of like nobody would have thought that Steph was going to be who Steph is.
Right.
Coming out of Davidson. Like that that would have been wild.
He had trouble getting a scholarship to Davidson.
Exactly.
So,
like that was the one D1 school, I think, right? Or something like that.
Yep.
I mean, not that I've watched a bunch of things where they talk about this stuff constantly at all recently. Anyways, Nick and I record a Patreon podcast that releases next week on Monday, every off Monday. If you want to, you can check that out at tywasap.com patreon.com/tywasap. It's this, except for a little more off the cuff and usually about basketball, which was kind of this one too a little bit.
I apologize. This one I wanted to be more like, I was trying to make it more about like the unrealisticness of expectations from people who are overachieving.
I feel like you did. I say that with love. I do
know that I can't help myself. I got to talk about stuff a little bit. I got to be like, and he 4 years in a row at 30 points game. I have to.
No, I appreciate it.
But more importantly, you can also follow us at TiWasap on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And you can find all of that at TiWasap.com.
Sounds fantastic. I accidentally minimized my thing, but I feel like now's the time where I tell you yet again, Nick, for the last time of this year, it's time to knuckle up and get ready for 2022. Thank you for potting with me.
Thank you for potting with me for a whole damn year. I'm impressed with you. You survived it.
A whole nother podcast of knuckling up.
Whole other podcast.
Of knuckling up and kicking back. And getting all right. This is where the outros
we started
play.
a podcast. Thank you all for listening.